Hey, friends. I hope that you are doing well today. It's sort of a Guatemala day. I like to think of these kind of days as that. It's a little coolness in the air. There's a light mist and a breeze, and the birds are making all kinds of great noise. It does remind me of being on the hillsides in Guatemala planting trees, which is really striking a chord with me today since our adult mission trip to Guatemala won't be occurring in May like it usually is, and I'm going to really miss that opportunity to serve alongside you all and the people of Air, Guatemala, our mission partner there. It also reminds me of how global, both in a literal and metaphorical sense, our current situation is. You know, everyone from the people in Guatemala and Honduras to the people at Thornwell in South Carolina to the people at the Community Assistance Center just down the street to you and me, all of us have had to make some difficult decisions about a lot of things. And the decisions seem to not get any easier as this goes on. And if anything, they've gotten more complicated, haven't they? I mean, is it just me? It seems like the decisions themselves are not only more complicated as this goes on, but the way that all of us feel about those decisions has intensified too. Where at one point we all seemed to be in a good consensus about things and what we needed to do. It's getting harder to stay together and of one mind about that, which is okay. It's what Presbyterians do really well, is to navigate our different opinions and our different views and take all of that into consideration and then move forward. I think a lot of the intensification, though, that we're feeling, that so many of you have expressed, is that we're all grieving. You know, grief is so much more than death. It's about loss, it's about feeling powerless, it's about uncertainty, and so many more things. And we're all experiencing grief in our own ways. Some of us, it comes out as sadness, and others anger, some fear and shutting down, and some of us it's frustration, and for some of us it's making every chocolate chip recipe you can possibly find. And some of us are experiencing what's known as anticipatory grief, that feeling that our greatest loss is yet to come. And some of us are feeling guilty in our grief because we're missing out on our traditions that don't really seem that important to others. Now, some of us try to hide our grief because we know that someone else in the world is having it much harder right now than we are. It's just a lot. It's a lot that we are dealing with individually and collectively. You know, just this week, we came to the realization as a church family that we are going to be missing some of the highlights of our year, like end of the year milestones with the St. Luke's Little Saints preschool graduation, and with celebrations of our high school seniors, and we're going to miss our mission trips and our youth conferences that mean so much to us, not only those who participate in those events, but to all of us as a church family. And so we're all dealing with this collective loss of the world as we knew it. And that's what grief expert David Kessler says. He also says that the worst grief in this moment is the grief that you are feeling. So it's whatever your grief is right at this moment. That's the worst grief in the world at this moment. And he encourages us to just help one another get through it. Don't judge one another. Don't one up one another in the grief that we are feeling. We're all feeling our own grief. And so we can all experience it differently, and we all have different ways of expressing it, and we all have different ways of coping with it. And so, as a church family, as people who love one another, let's remember to be kind and to be patient with one another, and to give each other a little grace when we misstep or when we feel upset with one another. And then let's reach out to one another and express how we feel and support one another. Reach out to the deacon or your pastors or to your friends at church, and let them know the grief that you're experiencing. Let's do this together like we do so many things. Because that's what we do, right? That's what we do as a church family. And so on our good days, let's check in on our friends and our neighbors and see how they're doing. And let's look for the ways that we together can move from this sense of grief that we feel to a sense of empowerment and of moving forward. You know, we can find ways to help out our mission partners, our outreach partners. We can find new ways to connect with one another. All of these things that people are thinking about, let's get our minds together and share those things and encourage one another and see what goodness can come out of the midst of our grief. Of course, if you need support and encouragement, let's be that to one another and encourage one another, because we're always stronger together than we are apart. Now, some of you have heard this metaphor before, but it's back. It's about when we started taking mission teams to Honduras early on. And we would be at the end of the trip at the airport on the runway about to take off into Tegucigalpa, Honduras. And now, because the runway is so short there, well, it was. So for those of you who are looking forward to a trip to Honduras, the runway has been increased lately. So there's my disclaimer. But at the time, the runway was really short. And so the pilot would have to back the plane up to the very end of the runway. If you were seated behind the wings and you looked out your window, you would see dirt under the plane when you looked out. But they would push the plane to the back of the runway, get it back there as far as they possibly could. And then the pilot would say, flight attendants, please prepare for takeoff. And the engines of that 757 would kick in and everything on the plane would start shaking until you were certain, and y'all, I am not exaggerating, you were certain that your teeth were going to rattle out of your head and that your heart was going to pound so hard that it was going to come right out of your throat. And for first timers, this sensation and anticipation would be so intense that it was terrifying. Literally, it was terrifying. And even as much as I would try to prep, like the person seated next to me, I would try to put some of our first timers in my row and right across the aisle from me so that I could make sure they knew that this is normal. This is normal and it's going to be okay. Trust me. But nevertheless, they would grab a hold of my hand or to the hand of the person next to them or to the armrest and hold on for dear life. And that's a little bit of like what we've got going on right here. Y'all are sitting on this plane just wishing that it would take off already. We are tired of the energy that it is taking to hold on. And we are so ready for this moment to be over. So ready to get up and find some smooth air. But until we do, let's be good to one another. Let's show each other compassion. And let's remember that God's people have been in situations like this before. Situations that make us feel powerless, that make us grieve. but always knowing that God is with us and we are in this together. As trivial as that may start to sound, we are in it together. So hang on, hold tight, and trust that this too will finally and eventually take off. It will be behind us. And everything really will be okay. Let's find all those new ways of being God's people together and in this world. And until then, y'all, know that you are loved dearly by your church family. And we'll see you soon.